It's so good to see you again.
It's good
Um,
to see you, Korenna.
yes, and as we were chatting, right before we hit record, you've been on silent retreat for a while, in between Warrior Weekend and now. So I imagine that's a big shift to go from a lot of energy and a lot of, connection and speaking right into a lot of solitude and a lot of introspection. So I'm interested to hear about those. And then also interested to hear, how the warrior stage of circling is landing for you and how it's been showing up in your life. I always ask, I have been asking the people to give their own like personal spiel on like what they like how warrior like how they interpret the warrior stage. Do you feel comfortable giving your own little 3 cents on, we've got sovereign, which is connecting to ourselves, and explorer, which is, getting the other person's world. What have you noticed about warrior, either in terms of other people or in terms of yourself, in terms of the circle in general? Like, what do you want to share with people about what you're getting about the warrior?
Yeah, it's an interesting question because immediately I have like a felt sense of the energy of it, right? Like it's
Mhm.
something that internally it's very clear. It's like, oh, it's this thing, but I was lacking words.
Mhm.
One thing that I can say how it feels for me is the thing that invites some form of verticality. It's like what I imagine is like a column holding things. So there's like the possibility to let things be very flowy, and it's nothing against flow. Flow is great, but then there's also sometimes the need to like really
Mhm.
become very heightened and aware and holding things. And that's for me kind of how it feels. Not necessarily in definitely not like pushy or aggressive, nothing like that, but like this sense of like this is what needs to be done. And
Yeah.
like I am the one responsible for making sure.
God, I like those ideas, like the structure and responsibility. Like, yeah, that those are definitely parts of the essence of the warrior. And the tagline for warrior is seeing what hasn't been seen,
Yeah.
which will lead into deep sea diver, which is feeling what hasn't been felt or hasn't been fully felt. So that makes sense though, like with the structure, and the responsibility of like, okay, like now we're trying to see in the blind spots or see what's in the periphery, but not fully understood yet. Where explorer is, like you said, like more kind of flowy, like, oh yeah, we're just exploring. But warrior kind of brings with it a sense of intentionality,
Mm.
more so than when it's funny. I was like, well, what am I going to say? Because we don't want to say it's not an agenda, but it's like there's a focus to it. Like there's an intentionality to it. We're still like surprised by it. It's still like, whatever is arising in the now is what we're going to, focus on. So there's not like a leading, but there's a little bit more of an intentionality and a little more of a structure to
Yeah,
it.
I like the word intentionality, and I especially because and I haven't done deep sea diver,
Mhm.
obviously, 'cause it's the next one.
Yeah.
But one thing that immediately came to mind when you said from going from seeing what hasn't been seen to feeling what hasn't been felt, at least for me, I've noticed when I'm on the participant side of anything, and that's I imagine when I'm being circled, there's something of a safety that I can feel when the person who is leading or circling me or just on the other side of the dynamic
Mhm.
leads in a way that I can allow myself to like, yeah, it's good to go here. Like there's something that becomes more available if let's say there's something that's not available if everything feels like, oh, this is not really, I don't know where this is going, like it's a little bit scary. And that containment, that responsibility somehow allows me to
Yeah.
soften somehow.
It's funny. I don't know if you've experienced this, but as I was listening to you, what occurred for me is like, um, sometimes when you're a circle lead, when you're the person who's the focus point of the circle, there can feel like a heavy responsibility of like, what do I share? What don't I share? What's important to say? What's not important to say? And there's a way that if someone is really embodying the warrior and like they have a clear curiosity or they have a clear thread, that it really lets you relax. And then, and I don't know if this has been your experience, but at least my experience in the times that I am being circled, I will often explore things that maybe I have overlooked or I have dismissed as not important simply because whoever is circling me pointed to it. And like
Yeah.
it almost feels like frivolous or like irrelevant until they put some attention on it. And then all of a sudden I realize how much relevance it really did have.
Yeah, yeah. I actually, this just happened to me at my practice spot yesterday night,
Mhm. Mhm.
and I was being circled, and I used like an analogy, something that I thought of many years ago. I think it was in 2021, actually during a silent retreat back then. And I just mentioned this because he was present in my mind, kind of to explain a situation. And the person who was circling me in that moment was like, "Oh, that's interesting. Can we stay with that thing?" And then from that little image,
Mhm.
so many different things in my life were like touched through that image. So it was a, and again, it's not something because for me, it's like this old thought, you know, it's like, yeah, something I thought of literally years ago. And then obviously it's still there because it's a thought that it's an image that I really like, but I wouldn't have given it that importance, definitely.
Yeah. It's always fascinating to me. And that's one of the things, I mean, I am a trained therapist and I do train therapists, but that's one of the things that made me love circling so much and made me actually kind of leave academia to focus on training circlers was like, there's something, in my opinion, really magical about the interrelatedness of circling that allows for these kinds of moments of like, as I'm listening to you, there was something about this metaphor or the way you were holding this metaphor that really caught the circler's attention. And so they're like, hey, can we stay here a little longer? And you were like, sure. You know, this is years old, but sure, I'll stay here for you. And then you learn layers of your own self. And so I just think there's something magical about the relationality. And it's kind of like as we hold mirrors up to each other. Like you know how like if you tilt the mirror, you can see a different angle. It's like, well, when we're looking in a mirror, we're only ever seeing straight on. But when the other person's holding a mirror, we're seeing different parts of our reflection. And so like when most therapists are trained to be, like just a mirror or like to like we're actually trained not to like get in there with you and have personal opinions. And I love the freedom of circling that allows us to go like, oh wait, something about that really held my attention. Or something about this. Like, well, in Warrior, when we talk about dissonance, it's like something about this feels dissonance. Like you're saying it's fine, but I'm listening and this does not feel fine. Like I'm angry on your behalf, or I'm like frightened for you, and you're telling me it's okay. Can we talk about that? Like
Mm.
how is it to hear that kind of thing? Yeah. It's funny. I used to tease that like Sovereign and Deep Sea Diver were my favorite of the seven stages, but I'm noticing how much I really do love Warrior and appreciate Warrior. Warrior is like almost like a turning point of the circle. Like whether it's going to be just like a juicy, pleasant conversation, that could be insightful and could be connective, but it's more like conversation versus is it going to be this like transformational like circle kind of thing.
Yeah. I really like the thing about the mirrors. I know it was a while ago, but I'm
Mm.
sitting with that still. Because
Hmm.
yeah, that's how it felt yesterday. That idea of for the other person could see and point to something that for them felt very big, for me wasn't, and then that allowed for a lot of unfolding.
Yeah, that's exciting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks. And it's interesting that you know we can explore this or not if it's not interesting to you, but if it's interesting to me, the thing about Warrior being pivotal seems like that might have been what was happening for you. Was it yesterday in the circle or like some previous circle when you were like, oh, like it seemed like there was a place for the circle to go. And maybe that's the thing you're noticing of like now that you have this warrior skill, when you're like, oh yeah, like circles have felt like good and connected and like attuned up till now. And now you're noticing that, like, oh, wait, like there is a place to go with them.
Yeah, yeah, and it's interesting because I hadn't thought of this before. I mean, this was just last night, but it brings me back to that thing we're speaking of the intentionality. Because
Hmm.
what had happened in that circle is I said, like, I just want to like speak about my retreat, it's like more like I'm taking this as my integration conversation. So I
Nice.
was a bit all over the place, right? I was like speaking about my experience being back in retreat after some time, thoughts that came. And then when the person who was circling me stopped in that metaphor, somehow it went from like a little bit all over the place. It became, there was like a thread that was pulled out, and then we
Yes.
were doing that specific thing. And it allowed maybe to get some depth instead of continue exploring the breadth. So
Yes.
somehow.
Yes. Oh, I love it. And that's going to be really important again for people who are interested in circling or how it works, or people who might be inspired to join the program after watching these videos. This idea of picking a thread, because you could unpack a lot of breadth of someone's experience. But there is a relationship between breadth and depth. And like we like to do them both at the same time, but like a little too much of one will prevent the other. And so this idea of like, yeah, picking out the thread and going deeper in that thread. Yeah. And warrior is what helps us do that, which is funny. And like, I just had a discussion with the boys on Tuesday. I've never been a fan of the phrase sealing the exits because I'm like, we don't seal them. People are not trapped. We're minding the exits. We're noticing where they are. We're noticing when people take them, but we're not sealing them. And can we please stop using that word? And I think I've actually won them over. So I think we'll leave it alone for the rest of you. But I think from now on that I am gonna change the full practice steps to be like we're minding exits. We're not sealing exits. But it's that idea. I mean, it is the essence of that, of like the warrior notices where the exits are, notices when we start to take them, and then makes sure that that's a choice. Like, was that an intentional choice? Do you really want to be doing this? Or did you do it out of habit? Or did you do it out of fear? Did you do it out of anxiety? Did you do it out of a desire to protect the listeners because you thought you were getting too intense or something like it's just paying attention to the intentionality of the choices and the movements in the circle.
Yeah, okay. So first, the quick thing.
Yes.
I actually love the term sealing the
You
exits.
do?
But I see your point, and I'm like, I
It's
do get
so
it.
funny. Some
But
people
that's
love
just my
it.
personality. I remember my chiropractor sent me a little thing that gives me electrical shocks if I'm hunching to fix my neck.
Mm-hmm.
Like some people hate this, but I think you will like it. You have that kind of personality, and I think that's why I also like the sealing the exits. It feels so firm.
Yes.
But other than that, it's funny that because that's the why because I was silent for some of this time. That's the thing that I was keeping in mind the most. Like being in meditation for so long, I could very quickly see when I would go from like, some experience comes up and I'm having a big feeling, and then this thing of like, oh, let's go to the story instead of like staying with the feeling. And of course, there was no one else to be able to point this out. My internal conversation was suddenly, hey, this has happened a couple of times now today, that there's
Mm-hmm.
like a big feeling coming up, and then suddenly I go to like the story, and that why am I doing that? And then I realized somehow that it made things easier because somehow it was easier for me to drop a story after it stops being juicy than dropping a feeling. So then
Mm.
and it was a tricky situation because I was still in meditation retreat, and there's this thing of like, no, I want to go back to meditation, like drop both the feeling and the
Yes.
story.
Yes.
But it was still very fascinating to see how even in a before that moment of awareness of like, okay, I'll drop the feeling and the story, there was like a moment in not in awareness, like unintentional of at some point having went from the feeling, having gone from the feeling to the story without me realizing, and then just being like, wait, when did this happen?
Yeah.
Uh, and like I was coming back to that a lot to warrior myself
I
when I
was
was
just thinking that. I was like, oh, you had to warrior yourself. And then you had to double warrior yourself because you're like, no, 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 I'm in a meditation retreat. So I've got to go back to the emptiness.
yeah,
Like, I got to let them both go, come back to my emptiness. Yeah.
yeah.
Beautiful. Hmm. What else do you want to share about Warrior? Whether it was preparatory videos or it happened
Um,
in any of the exercises or any other stories about worrying yourself or others?
yeah, I have another story
Or
about
solitude.
worrying myself actually, and it's related. I shared when we were doing in the weekend discussing the videos. One of the things that really impacted me was when Guy was speaking about. Maybe I will misquote him greatly, but it's me paraphrasing. But it's something like if we're going to, we need to face a discomfort, and then like in the name of what are we facing this discomfort?
Yes. Yeah, yeah,
Like
yes.
this, it's the warrior, not the savage. I really like that
Yes.
phrase.
Yes.
And so I was keeping that in mind a lot because I know that's something recently in my life. I'm like trying to avoid things that feel because for the longest time I like exploited myself. Like I just pushed through
Yeah, yeah,
everything.
yeah.
And now it seems like I went to the other extreme. And now, I'm trying to find that balance.
Hmm.
Having that in mind, and also there's this thing in the preparatory videos about core wounds.
Hmm.
And it's funny because what I thought was my strongest, like the one I didn't see as strong during
Hmm.
the discussions and the exercises came up for me very recently. So
Hmm.
I was invited to go to a workshop in Costa Rica, and I was like, no, there's no way I'm doing this. There's not enough money. Complete
Hmm.
lie. That I definitely, thank God, have the money. There is not enough time, and I have unlimited PTO at work. It made me think of
Hmm.
guys saying like we're running out of timelessness, right? It's like
Yes.
how can I have not enough unlimited PTO? So just like the circumstances were such that it was just very in my face that this story of like there's not
The
enough
scarcity
money,
story.
time, what all of them, yeah, was just a scarcity story. And I was like, wow, can I actually go through this discomfort? Because maybe what's underlying is like the fear of not being perceived, like fear of being perceived as I'm taking too much time off, even though it's technically unlimited.
Yes.
Fear of the running out of money, even though realistically this whole workshop thing was not a significant financial impact in my life whatsoever. So just seeing that story and how alive it felt, and also have to wire myself through, like, okay, let's go through the discomfort. It will feel weird to take the time off and spend the money, but in the name of what am I
Yeah.
doing that for? And in
Yes.
the name of what would I just stay with it? Okay, yeah, there's not enough resources to do this.
Yes. I love this, like in the name of what? Like sometimes we also talk about like finding your why, whether it's through validation and like what's the why, or like your curiosity, like from whence is this springing forth? Like what, like where is it coming from? And it's funny, I love that the core wounds exercise or the iceberg exercise, because it so clearly breaks down like what motivates us. Where oftentimes we're just content to kind of just let those things like run us like a script in the background. And then when we really slow down and we're like, okay, like what are these core wounds that are like the filter through which we see the world and interpret people, things that are been said to us, experiences that we observe. Like, what are the core wounds that we are filtering this information through? And then what are the strategies we use to cope with or defend against that? And like,
Yeah.
once, like if they're back here, they're just running us. But if we can pull them into the foreground and let them be a part of our understanding, again, the intentionality, like it opens up so much more choice. And like you said, I might make the same decision. You still may choose not to go to Costa Rica, but at least you're doing it from a place of like power and agency and intentionality, and you're not doing it out of like habit or fear or anxiety. And it's interesting because this is why I tease that the artist circling program is like it's a professional development program, but it's also a personal growth program, and it's also kind of a mastermind group that you get to be in, because if you're really doing it right, you can't help but learn more about yourself. Like, sure, the primary reasons we are here is to like learn this model and the tenets of the model because we want to apply it to either like personal life, professional life, relationships, coaching, something. But you can't help it if you're really going to learn the model and you're going to like apply it to yourself while you're learning it. you really can't help but like grow and transform what as you're learning. And I think that's one of my favorite parts about teaching, like getting to watch you guys, but also John Guy and myself and the CLTs, like we're constantly growing and learning as we're, doing this alongside of you. It's-
Yeah, yeah, and it's funny because I think this is the first time, and I even wrote to you earlier today, right? Saying, hey, Korenna, I'm a little bit concerned because I've been in silence,
Mhm.
so I haven't had time to really like practice these skills somehow. But now talking to you, I see like, oh, it was just a different taste. Because I think for Explorer and Sovereign, there was like more of this thing of like, okay, let's try to bring it out, use them in conversation, because that was like my original take on what I was going to do this for. But it's very interesting to see how, due to this fact that I was silent for so long, it was myself, and I was practicing it more and more with myself. And it also feels like a beautiful one of the stages to be able to like practice on in my
Yes.
one.
Yes. Well, and also I really appreciate you sharing that, Jorge, because I think it's very real. And I don't know if people have articulated it quite the way that you have. Like there's been a way, not just with the early stages, but also with the program in general, that people come in thinking like, well, I'm explicitly doing this to learn how to interact with others better. And so this is like, then I'm going to go out and practice, like, how do I listen and how do I speak to others? And there is a like a whole different layer and a whole different flavor of it's like, and where am I applying these in my own life?
Mm, mm.
And so I actually kind of really like that circumstances with you being on retreat and being in so much solitude gave you this opportunity to like almost accidentally
Yeah.
be turning the same tools and skills inward.
Yeah, and it's funny that you mentioned that. I saw you move your face, and I wonder if I'm interrupting you, but I will still
No, no, no.
interrupt you. Uh, I just wanted to point it out, but I will still do the thing. Because during my retreat, it was Mahashivaratri, like a celebration that we do every year at the school where I was in retreat. And there's like a whole ritual, and anyway, at one point, there's a prayer and where one asks for compassionate speech. And I remember in that moment when we were all doing the prayer, like, give me compassionate speech, first thought that came to my mind was like, but I'm doing this thing, I'm doing AOC, I'm doing all these authentic relating things. And then there was this moment like, and how's my speech with myself? Like how, like I'm doing all of these things, and am I applying this when I have my inner dialogue?
Yes.
I as compassionate and curious as I am when I'm circling someone, when I'm just speaking to myself? And that was like something that came up to me in retreat. So it's very funny that you mention it now, as because I had that realization in that moment of like, okay, yes, all of this, the discourse that I'm taking and interacting with other people, but also why is it not yet reflected in my own inner speech with myself?
Mm. So, well, I love that you paused me with something you noticed, like true essence of the warrior, and something we're really trying to help our students get, but also help the universe get. Like, so I think, especially in America, we're trained not to interrupt people. Like, oh, don't interrupt. And like, I really want to change the narrative on that of like, if you pause someone like while they're talking about something because something they did or said really caught your attention, are you really interrupting them? Like,
Mm,
or are you contributing there? Because I've had it happen to me so often, and I watch it happen with our circlers, where they let the person finish their thought and they're like, 6 sentences ago, you made this face or you said this phrase. Like, can we go back there? And they're like, no, I can't. I don't know. It's gone now. And like, so the idea of like being courageous enough to go, wait, what was that? Like, even if like you pause and you look up while you're searching for a word, like what's happening right now? You know, and like and for speakers and listeners to get that that's actually like an act of connection. Like
mm.
it's not disrespectful or it's not like I get so upset. that, it's, as a couples therapist, when people are like, well, they're interrupting me. I was like, well, they interrupted you for to ask for clarification about what you were saying because they were confused. Is that really interrupting you? Did you want them to let you finish your thought and then go like, well, I haven't been listening for the last 3 minutes because you said something back there that I didn't understand. And so I haven't under then I just let you talk for 3 or 4 more minutes and now we've got a reverse. Or would you wait, what? What are you talking about? Are you talking about this or this? Oh, I'm talking about this. Okay, I'm on the same page again. Let's go. And so like this idea of so the warrior pauses for impact, like the pauses out of curiosity to, to seek more clarity or to like mine for impact. The warrior minds the exits and then checks to see like, hey, like, is this a habit or is this intentional? Right? So you doing this out of fear or out of choice, you know? Yeah. And then the warrior, I love the other distinction you made. Like the warrior is not a savage. Like the warrior has an intentionality. They're warring for you. They're warring for something, like for the relationship or for the person. They're not, savage attacking against something. Um, Yeah, so I'm loving having this conversation and the idea of like, and it's not just about the external, like there's an internal as well. And I don't know if you've ever seen any of the videos that Cody and I did last year from AOC 12, but one of my favorite things that Cody has ever said, and I think he said it at the end of his program, was that his inner critic has become an inner circler.
Mm,
And he said that he's noticed the way that he talks to himself has changed over the course of the last 9 months.
mm,
Ooh,
mm.
tell me, tell me. That seemed to hit.
Yeah, it feels really sweet and it got me really, it's like opening up realm of possibilities for me in some way. There's like this sense of, yeah, of course, it's not only about the out there, it's also about the in here.
I don't know if this will have any relevance for you, but like as I'm listening to you, Jorge, it just occurred to me of like the more gentle and intentional. I know you said you kind of can get fierce with yourself and you're like, really like, but the more like supportive, gentle, intentional you can be with yourself, I think the more natural you will be like with all of your students and your coworkers and the people that you teach. And so
Yeah.
you won't have to like effort to be this way while you're teaching. Like it'll just move through you. Um, I don't know. That's what just occurred to me as I was watching you talk. Like,
Yeah, no, definitely it resonates. And it's something even like I know a little bit of already. Like I've experienced as I softened my own self expectations and shoulds, how there's more acceptance for other people to show up in ways that I wouldn't.
uh-huh.
Uh, but so yeah, it does make sense, and I'm curious to see how it manifests
Yeah.
out world in when this inner change starts to be absorbed also through the rest of AOC.
Yeah. I'm excited to see how it will expand, because we're only halfway in, and so like this continued expansion of the self-compassion and acceptance and curiosity. And it's so funny, like we teach attunement as if it's something that happens between ourselves and someone else. But, in my almost 30 years now as a therapist, I think self-attunement does not get enough attention. Like we are so often out of attunement. Like we're shoulding on ourselves or like we should do this, we shouldn't do that. We can't do this, we mustn't do that. Rather than really finding the attunement with ourselves of like, what's my capacity today? And like, is
Mm,
this really bringing me joy? And if it's
mm,
not, what's slightly to the left or the right of it that would feel more aligned, because so often we're like, oh, I just have to. Do you really have to? Or is it possible that there's a third option that you just haven't thought of yet that will satisfy you and this person who has expectations from you? And so, like, yeah, I don't know. Like, speaking to you today has really driven home the self-attunement piece and like how I don't know that we give it enough attention and like that it deserves equal attention. Attuning with others is great, but like, can you attune to yourself as well? How's that hitting for you?
Yeah, it's very, I notice I feel like a big exhale somehow. That's how I feel. Like, oh, yeah. Especially because I definitely do all of that. I should not do this. I have to do this thing. I was one thought that came to my mind when, as you were saying, like, do you really have to do that? Is like Byron Katie's work, right? Like, is this really true? Yes. Really? Is it true?
Yes. Yes.
And I
Yes.
think that in itself is a little
What
bit of a
else is
trigger
true?
thing,
Yeah.
you know? Yeah, yeah. And so there's just like a relaxed but a sense of excitement. Like, oh, I want
Yeah.
to keep exploring this possibility of what's, like you said, very I liked it. Slightly to the left or slightly to the right of the thing, but that would bring me more joy. Um, yeah, I don't know. I'm just like happy to hear that, excited to try that, and at the same time, it's like an excitement that just makes sense. So it allows me to drop rather than to like add something to my to-do list. Okay, now check this, it's like just like, this sounds right.
Yeah. Oh, I love it when that happens. Like when something just makes sense at your core and you don't even feel like you have to practice it. You're like, oh, now that I've experienced it, it feels like I'm like integrating it into my operating system, and it's almost going to be effortless. It's not going to take effort. Yeah. Beautiful. Anything else? Anything else in your awareness or that's alive for you that you want to share with our community today or discuss between you and I today?
Hmm. No, I think I feel
Good.
quite complete now.
Well, yeah, me too. I know it's funny. I'm like, yeah, I imagine you and I could talk to each other for hours all the time, but we've got to pause at some point. This feels good for today. I'm so glad we did this.
Yeah, me too. Thank you.
Thank you, Jorge.